The list of young, unarmed black men shot and killed by law enforcement officers in recent years is far too long to go through here. In reality, this is an unfortunate practice that is not unique to modern times. For perspective, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black teen lynched in 1955 in Mississippi after being falsely accused of flirting with a white woman, would be 82 years old in 2023, around the same age as several of our current elected officials. We want to give you a brief history of policing here in the United States, and Professor Jeffries is going to take it from here.
Well, when we think about policing in America, we have to look at its roots and its origins, which are really tied to the era of slavery. Policing in America was originally designed to control and regulate black enslaved labor. Once emancipation occurs in 1865, then we see a gradual evolution of the role of police in America. But we see a jump really at the turn of the 20th century. Once we begin to see the making of modern American cities and the migration of African Americans from the rural South into urban America, then American police forces begin to change. As we move over the course of the 20th century, we also see the militarization of the police. Literally after every war, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and then more recently during the war on drugs. And so when we combine the two, a history of an institution, the arm of the state to control and regulate black labor that then becomes hyper-militarized over time, we wind up with the current state of policing that we have today.
All right, so we have our sort of working definition. We've level set on that. How then should we proceed when we think about the fact that the modern system of law enforcement is shaped by that?
Well, I think it's important for us to realize that the legacy of this system designed to control people, control and regulate their behavior. This is not about protect and serve. This is about regulate and control. That we're dealing with not just a history, but a culture of policing that has this roots in this practice that was never designed to protect black folk, but was rather designed to serve as sort of an oversight force. And so unless we deal with that history, we won't be able to deal with the problems that continue to stem from it.
All right, so when we talk about the talk and we think about this working definition, let's talk about the experiences that each of you might have in giving the talk. Is it something that you do only when you're dealing with the police, or do you think about the implications of everything we've just heard?
Well, for me, I have a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, and 25. 2 girls and my son. My son is in the middle. And for me, it was just not around just dealing with the police, but it was also in the educational system, because it's also how our teachers look at our children. Because I had one incident in junior high where a teacher actually told a principal that she was afraid of my son. So a 7th-year-old who's a dark-skinned male, and he's acting like every typical male his age, but you give the impression that you're afraid of him, that he's a threat to you. So when we're having that talk is not just how you carry and behave when you're dealing with police, but it's also when you go into a store and you know someone is following you. It's in your school, and you know how your teachers are looking at you, how coaches are looking at you. It's really, the talk is about every place you go as an African-American citizen, because you're always faced with an issue, no matter where you're going.
Yeah, I could jump in. I concur with that about how it's bigger than policing. And every institution that you deal with, you always look at yourself, how you perceive yourself, and anticipating, frankly, how you think white people will look at you, and kind of knowing when to switch yourself into what mode at what time. You're always thinking about, how will this look to this person, right? You don't know if any individual white person may be looking at you like that, but you don't know. So when you deal with the police, when you deal with schooling, when you go for job interviews, how to interact with institutions given that history is a lesson I got, everybody that I know got. I'm going to teach my children how to deal with that, just to reduce the risk. And I think that's a important thing that you kind of pointed out. I'm gonna tell my son, then it changes over time, like how it manifests. So I got babies, right? So I got a 5-year-old and I got an 18-month-old, right? So I anticipate how is this going to evolve 20 years from now based on the past 200, right?
Right,
That's the
yes.
job that I have, right? What is it going to look like? We got AI, for example. I got to worry about what facial recognition software, how it sucks. I'm an engineer. It's all terrible. I just don't even wind me up. But so for facial, I got to teach them about that. Fingerprinting, how technology enhances the cops to do things that today they think is okay in colorblind, but 20 years from now, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, that was a bad idea, right? So those are the things I kind of think about.
And then, have you had the talk already?
About, not in regards, well, yeah, I have actually, because during the killing of George Floyd, my son was walking around he was in the kitchen and he said to me, Mommy, why are police killing Black people? He said, I thought police were here to protect us. I thought they were good people. And we had to have the talk and understanding that you can have good people in bad systems. And the thing is, and having this conversation with somebody that's 7 and trying to reduce that down, because he looks at the officer at his school as a really great person versus looking at what happened. I mean, you couldn't hide the George Floyd incident. Like, I mean, even if they're on their iPads or whatever, you couldn't hide the impact. And we had to have the conversation. So we had that conversation with him. And then we also have had the conversation about school, like how they interact with him, the perception of Black boys, what their capabilities are. He had written a note and he got in trouble because he had said in a note that he hated somebody and he got in trouble for that. And they were like, we just didn't want this to turn into violence. And I was like,
How old is he?
7.
at the time he was 7. And so, like, I had to have the conversation with the school, and they found the letter at the end of the school year, and they, like, called him into the office. It was something he wrote at the beginning of the school year. And so having those conversations with him have already started. And then I also have nephews now that are driving. And so, and I have a nephew that's like 6'8", dark skin. And so he's already started driving. And so I've had to have the talk with them. And so I found this, for Christmas, I'm getting them this app called Turn Signal, where they can actually download to their phone, and it's free for low-income individuals, that they can actually, on their phone, when they get pulled over, they can voice command an attorney to come on, and that it can be on speakerphone when they get pulled over, so that there's an attorney there to kind of navigate that, because it's the sense of helplessness you feel as a Black parent, that you know there's really nothing you can really do to protect them from that moment. You can reduce risk, you can try to give them the talk, but the sense of powerlessness is what you feel. And so even though I'm not for sure if Turn Signal is going to save them, I'm hoping it reduces the risk. You know, my nephew called me, he's like, oh, Aunt Ebony, I went to this party at UD. I'm like, you better stay out of UD, right?
UD's live.
But I was like so afraid, right? Like, and then I remember an incident, because I was living in this all-white suburb, and I remember my nephews were running towards the house. I was like, what happened? What happened? And they were like, we're jogging.